Hello, beautiful. And what I really want to know is what is good in your life today? My name is Kia, and this is another episode of the Female Veterans Podcast. Today, I have with me a really special lady. She is a veteran of the United States Army, and she is an author, a comedian, an artist, and a philanthropist. And I am so excited to share her story with you today. Her name is Olympia. Welcome, Olympia.
Hello.
I'm so glad that you could join me today. And I guess we'll just jump right into it. So tell me, what made you join the military?
Well, I'm a family-oriented person, and my mother, she was a single parent, and I knew I needed to help her with paying for my college education. And so I knew there were a lot of benefits to enlisting in the armed services, and I joined the Army.
You know what? I really identify with that because I remember telling my mom, it's time to go to college. And she was like, who do you think is going to pay for that? She said, you know what? Anyway, you're going to the military. And I was just like, what? I'm going to the military. And she was like, yep, you're going to the Army. And so I rebelled and went to the Navy. So I feel you there. It was a great way to get that college money. Yeah. So tell me, what was boot camp like for you?
Well, I am an athlete. I played basketball. I ran track in high school. And so I was in really great physical shape. And so I really enjoyed the running, the sit ups, the push ups, any type of physical training that we did. I enjoyed it. I wasn't so excited about waking up at 5 a.m.
Right.
to do physical training. However, I loved it. And I have a story actually about basic training that I would like to share.
Awesome.
When I went to the shooting range to qualify for weapons training, my drill sergeant said that anyone who qualified would, or whoever shot the most targets that day, would earn his marksman badge. And so I was motivated and I wanted that badge.
Yeah.
And so I went out that day on the range and I shot 38 out of 40 targets. And later that day, the drill sergeant handed me the badge. It was the best moment ever.
Oh my gosh, I love that story. I mean, we didn't shoot when I was in boot camp in the Navy. So I didn't get that experience of hitting all those targets and that environment where you're just learning everything and you're bonding with everybody. So that must have been an amazing experience for you, setting your mind to it and then accomplishing it.
Absolutely.
Wow. So tell me, did you make a lot of close friendships in boot camp?
I did. I really connected with a lot of the other women who were there because a lot of us were from the South. I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas. And of course, every day you're doing these trainings together, you're sharing this experience, and you bond and you would naturally make friendships. And, I don't talk to anyone from basic training anymore, but I have talked to, or I still communicate with my friends from Korea.
Right on. That's good. I'm so sad not to be in contact with anybody I went to boot camp with, but it happens. I was in boot camp before cell phones and the internet was just becoming a thing. Like I remember I had email I'm pretty sure. And I remember I bought like this little handheld device, was ahead of my time, really. And it had email on it. So I could keep in touch with my little boyfriend who was going to another going to another base. But anyways, yeah, it was hard to keep in touch. And I didn't keep in touch with them. So it was really hard to keep in touch with people back
Yes.
then. So
Yes.
I feel you. So what was your biggest takeaway from boot camp, do you think?
Well, I would say I was in the best shape, physical shape of my life. I learned how to disassemble a weapon, something that I never thought I could do. I was doing it. I ran 6 miles at certain times. Some days I ran less than that. I pushed myself to be the best version of myself when I was at basic training. And I'll never forget the experience.
I think that's safe to say none of us could ever forget it. It was just absolutely life changing. You just
Absolutely.
it's like if you could stick a pin in the timeline of your life, one goes right into boot camp because everything after that is completely different. It's completely different.
You feel like you can do anything.
I agree. I agree. So after boot camp, where'd you go?
I went to Fort Lee, Virginia. My MOS was 92 Yankee Supply, and I was a supply specialist at the time. And so I spent about 10 weeks in Fort Lee, and I learned all about the supply room, the different equipment and materials that we would be ordering for our unit. I learned so much about what would be required of me to do my job once I left AIT.
So what was the experience like in AIT, like outside of the classroom? Because for me, A school was sort of like going to college in a way. Like I had classes and but with PT classes and
Right.
physical training. But for hospital corpsmen, it's not like that for everybody in the Navy and all the A schools. But for us, it was different. We were the only ones on our base. We were at the Retreat Training Command in Great Lakes, Illinois. And we were the only ones who could go into our civilian clothes right after classes were done. So we get back to the barracks and we'd put on our civilian clothes and then we'd go hang out. And we seemed to have a lot more freedom than everybody else. Did you have an experience like that in the Army, or was it like super strict in AIT as well as it was in boot camp?
Yes, we were allowed to change into civilian clothes after we were finished with classes every day. And on the weekends, there was a club on post that we all went to together. And I think they had sodas. I don't think they sold alcohol or anything like that. But that was enough for us. We had a blast.
Oh, I remember those days. So the club on the base where we were was called the Helm at first, right? And the first, like, I think 2 years I was on there and they served alcohol, but you had to be of age. Like, you had to have your ID, obviously, and you had to be of age. They didn't allow underage drinking on our base because it was a strict training command. And
Right.
so we used to go, I remember I used to go dance by the jukebox because there was no space to dance. It was like a pool hall and kind of like a bar. Actually, where I met my boyfriend. And but later they changed it into a nightclub on one side and it was called Club Nitro. And girl, we used to get down. These girls think they invented twerking. But anyway, so we was wild when we were young out on that base, let me tell you, in the base club. So I feel you. No matter what your experience was, it is always fun to hang out at the base club, I think.
It was.
Yeah. So after you finished school, how was your transition to active duty?
I didn't have an easy experience or an easy transition. I didn't have a degree at the time. I was a single mom. And so I was looking for a job as soon as I came back from Korea and left active duty. And so I found a job at a telemarketing company. called ICT in Conway, Arkansas. And I was meeting other people. I was moving up in the company and just taking my time, working, taking care of my child. And then I decided to go back to college because I started college. I was in the Army National Guard. And so I went to basic training in AIT. And then I came back home and I trained once a month and I went to college. So then I left college, went on active duty, and I served on Fort Hood, Texas, and traveled to Korea, South Korea for a year, and then came back home to Little Rock, Arkansas. And like I said, I went back to college and then graduated with my bachelor's degree in communication.
Well, okay, so I have some questions because I want to go back and revisit a little bit more of your active duty time. Then we can come back and talk more about your transition out because it seems like it was pretty decent. But I want to hear about first, you mentioned Fort Hood, and we all know that Fort Hood has been in the news lately for not the best of things. So I'm curious as to know like leadership changes, but what was the base like when you were on it?
Well, I believe it wasn't as safe for women back then when I was there in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
I would go out to different clubs and I would be hanging out, and there would be guys, trying to date me. And, you know, I didn't feel safe all the time on post. And, I felt like there were soldiers who felt discriminated against, that felt like there was assault going on. So it was there before,
Wow.
the recent publicity
Mhm.
that it's receiving.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really tragic, everything. And then all the other news that's come out of things that have been going on at Fort Hood that I saw. And it's just crazy everything that's been happening there. So it's for me, it's also shocking and disappointing to hear that 20 years prior, while you were on the base, you weren't feeling safe just going from like out. And when we were young like that, we were going to clubs, we were doing all this stuff, and it would be very uncomfortable in the city of Chicago, right? For us, it was actually safer on the base, at least from my experience, than it was to be out in the city of Chicago. That's where I received that aggressive sort of harassment from men when I would be going out and about. So I always thought of the base. Granted, there was a rapist loose on our base for a little bit, but in general, when that guy was caught and all the anxiety went away, I guess I will say, went back down, I felt safer on the base. Like that's where I would go if someone was bothering me off the base, I would go onto the base. So to me, it's very, very upsetting when I hear so many stories of how women didn't feel safe on the base. So, yeah.
So my thoughts are that command has to do a better job of making female soldiers feel secure, even when they're on and off the base.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a friend ask me, she's British and she didn't serve in the military, but she asked me, didn't you guys learn any hand to hand combat while you were in the military? And I was like, no, at least I didn't. She was like, I'm like, I grew up in the city, so I knew how to fight, right? Like I knew how to take care of myself. I know how to
Right,
take care of
right.
myself, but I wasn't like learning Krav Maga or anything like that, or any sort
Or
of or
taekwondo.
Taekwondo as part of my recruit training.
Right,
So, but
right.
it's not a bad idea though. Actually,
No, it's not.
I actually been doing a lot of research. I have an upcoming interview with one of the advocates for the legendary 6888 unit, African American female unit who served in World War II. And
Wow.
yeah, and one of the places they were stationed in France, the men they weren't allowed to carry guns, so they had to learn jujitsu to keep the men off the base.
Oh, wow.
Right. So actually, well, I know it works. So maybe
Yes,
it's not such a bad plan to to train the females in some sort of hand to hand combat.
exactly.
Hmm. Yeah. So when you moved off of Fort Hood, you went to Korea. What was that like? My brother served in Korea actually with the army, but in the 80s, late 80s, I want to say. So what was it like for you?
I was in Korea in 2002
Hmm.
and I was there for 1 year. I enjoyed myself. I would hop on a bus and ride for about 45 minutes to Seoul, which is the capital of South Korea.
Hmm.
And there was a post there, and they had the most, I would say it was a luxury type of hotel there.
Mm.
And it was known as the Dragon. And they had restaurants and dining and shopping. And I would go there to get my hair styled and my nails done. I felt like I was going there to get a treat for myself. And I would get done up and then I would come back to my post. And I felt so much better about being a woman soldier,
Hmm.
doing that for myself every now and then instead of being in uniform and having to, brush my hair into a ponytail all the time.
I feel that. I feel that. I mean, I actually talked to some female veterans about their transition out after long periods of time in the military. And
Mhm.
they sort of have to also rediscover their femininity. Right. So it's amazing that
Right.
you got to go do that while you were serving and like feel like a million bucks. Let me tell you, I think a makeover is absolutely one of the things that every woman needs to have in their life. A spa day, a makeover, a massage, like a
Yes.
shopping spree, and getting your makeup, when you get your makeover, getting your makeup professionally done. You got to experience that one time in your life and then have a photo shoot when you're all
Yes.
done up, have a photo shoot because it will show you. A lot of times we forget that we are our own worst critics and we forget that we are the one who has to think that we're the most beautiful ourselves, right? And
Yes.
having that experience of feeling amazing and then seeing yourself looking amazing all done up is just such a great reminder of actually your inner beauty. Right.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
and it's fun. It's fun. I think everybody should do it.
Yes. And, that was something that I did that for myself. And I still do that to this day because it's so important to me to take good care of myself.
Absolutely, girl. I feel that. I am with you. And I like to do that too. I actually do like to go get photo shoots done when I can. And I like to do them with my kids too, with my two sons, and have like a sort of a fashion style family photo done. And we just have
Yes.
such a great time doing it. I really enjoy that. That's actually, we haven't asked for the advice yet, but that is amazing advice already. I can't wait to hear
Okay.
what your what your other advice later in the show is going to be. So, what else did you do in Korea? You said you made friends there.
Yes. What is so hilarious about Korea is I worked in a supply room that was connected to the headquarters for my unit. And then all of my friends worked down the street and at other places. Like one was a mechanic and they worked, you know, in a mechanic building. So I wouldn't see my friends until after work was over every day. But we called ourselves the Click Click.
I
And
love that.
there are about 8 of us and we still hang out. I actually traveled to New Orleans, Louisiana to see my friend Crystal Veal, who was in Korea with me. And We went shopping, had dinner, and now I'm planning on going to see her again. She got married. She has 2 daughters,
Aw.
and they just built a brand new house in Louisiana. So I'm going to visit them after, the pandemic slows down.
Absolutely. I can't wait to travel, girl. I have got cabin fever for my area. Okay.
Yes.
I just want
Yes.
to get on a plane and go. I have a brand new baby niece who is 4 months old that I haven't got to get my hands on yet in Philadelphia. I cannot wait to go home and see my baby niece and my baby brother and my wonderful little sister that he married. So I feel that that's going to be a fun time. And I also love to reconnect with my military friends. I actually am friends with quite a few of the guys. I used to hang out with a crew of guys. We actually had a name too. We were called the Fonzies.
I love it.
we used to get into a lot of trouble, girl. We were all over that place doing everything probably we shouldn't have been, but we had a lot of fun. And, we had a really good military experience, being that we had the strictest base and probably in the Navy that we were all stationed on, but we managed to have a good time. So tell me, when you were leaving Korea, what was that process like? Did you get out directly after, or were you still in the National Guard when you returned home?
I left active duty and I was completely, well, I no, I went into the National Guard. Yes.
Mhm,
And I stayed in the National Guard from 2003 to 2009. So that's 6 years, right?
mhm.
And I was stationed with a aviation unit in the National Guard. And I actually just reconnected with my supply sergeant, who is my supervisor from the National Guard, like a couple of months ago. And he was telling me, you guys were like my kids. I'm your
Aw.
I'm your dad for life,
Oh my
and
gosh.
it was
So
so
sweet.
beautiful.
That is really sweet. I think I mentioned in a recent episode about I think it was a third class petty officer, maybe it was a second class, I can't remember now, but it was Petty Officer Arnold. And he was just everything. Like he was just the most wonderful of all fun. He was fun. He was funny. He just made core school so enjoyable. And we just loved him. When I became staff, I couldn't wait to hang out with him. And I did hang out with him a bit. And then I got really into step aerobics while I was serving too. That was like my thing for a while. And there was this chief, I always called him James. So I don't remember his last name. Isn't that crazy? But he was out of uniform because he was the aerobics instructor and he was tough. And I just loved him. So there was some really great standouts. My commander in the pharmacy, Commander Hirsch, was amazing. There were just some really standout people who, I mean, I'm sure to this day, if we connected, it would be all love. So I love that story. That's beautiful.
Yes, his name was Sergeant Noah King.
Aw, I love that. When I do my coaching for London Real Academy, all of the people, I do adult learners. So all of the people I'm coaching that are on my team are my babies. And I tell them that too. And then some of them are like 65 years old. I do not care. All my babies, if you're on my team. So I love how sweet he was about that. It was really
Yes.
sweet. And so tell me, what do you think was the biggest obstacle you faced while you were serving, if you had any?
That's a good question. I wanted to be a sergeant first class.
Hmm.
And I had a lot of support trying to move up and make rank. I actually obtained the rank of E5, in the Army,
Hmm.
and was a supply sergeant. And I went to BNOC and I was going to be set up to be promoted to E6. And the next rank was what I had set out to accomplish E7, but I got out of the Army.
Oh, that kind of happened to me. I feel that. So, as the story goes, I really didn't work very hard at trying to advance. I just wanted to pass the time, to be honest with you. Like, I knew very early in my career that I wasn't going to have a 20-year career. Right.
Okay.
So I felt like, let me just do my 5 years active and my 3 years in active reserve. Right. Let me just finish this out. And really, making rank doesn't matter that much to me. And then it sort of started to towards the end. And just, I was required to take the test before I was getting out, like maybe, I don't know, the month before I was getting out or within weeks prior to me getting out. So I took the test and, girl, don't you know I passed that thing? I made rank, but I was already out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it didn't even matter. But it was interesting when they called me. It was like, oh my God, guess what? And I was cracking up. But it did sting a little bit. So I feel your pain. I feel your pain. So, aside of what was challenging for you, what was your greatest takeaway from serving in the military?
I would say I was just leaving high school and I really didn't have everything lined up, or I didn't have the best plan for my life, but it was the best decision that I made for my adult life because it gave me structure, it gave me discipline. I learned how to manage money for the first time because that was the first time I really had a full-time job. And then, like I said, I went into the National Guard, so it wasn't full-time in the National Guard, but when I was on active duty, it was full-time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying I had a chance to learn about managing money, how to take care of myself, washing clothes, laundry, keeping my barracks room clean, and just being able to manage being an adult without my parents' supervision.
You grew up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you became responsible. That's amazing. I think the military does that for a lot of people. There is no, I think, better way to just really get grown. You're right out of high school, you have a job, you know what I mean? You can be responsible for yourself. And then I remember when I moved off base, I was staff for a year, I think a year and a half, and I was able to move off base. I had my first apartment at 20, right? And I had my car, and I felt so independent. And it was such an amazing feeling. A lot of the stuff I had learned already, like I took a financing course in high school as an
Mhm.
elective it was called Math for Life or something like that. And it taught me how to like balance my bank account, my checkbook, and, pay bills and stuff like that, which I think every school should do for their seniors, by the way. And
Yes.
financial education is so deficient. But also because I was at private school, I learned how to do laundry. It was part of the requirements. So I had to do chores at that school. So at the Milton Hershey School. So I knew that stuff, but like actually being on my own and really physically doing it and having the income to do it, it just made you grow up. It made you responsible for yourself. In fact, there was a time where I was working like 2, 3 jobs in the military just because I wanted the experience of doing that and the extra money. And so I agree with you. I think that was an amazing benefit of serving, was being able to stand on my own 2 feet and not. In fact, I helped my mom pay her mortgage off, by the way.
Oh,
So that
wow.
was an incredible feeling.
Yes.
Hmm. Yeah. So tell me now, we were talking about your transition out a little bit earlier. Did you have any difficulties transitioning back to civilian life?
Well, it was just being able to adjust to a job that matched what I did in the Army.
Ooh, I feel that.
And
Mhm.
I didn't have a lot of opportunities where I could say I could use my experience from the military in the civilian life. And that really frustrated me a little bit. But like I said, I went back to college. And when I went back to college, I knew that I wanted to teach because both of my parents are teachers or were. My dad passed away in 2019.
I'm so sorry. I'm so
But
sad to hear that.
thank you. It's I'm dealing with it and taking it one day at a time.
Yeah, I completely understand. My mom passed a few years back, and my father passed away when I was very young. So I definitely understand. It's been, I want to say it was 2017, and it still feels pretty fresh. And we had a troubled relationship. So it's still, it's still at one day at a time. So I, again, want to just send my condolences.
That's okay. Thank you. But I was saying I wanted to be a teacher.
And your dad was.
Yes, he was.
And so you went back to school, you were going to be a teacher. And then what happened?
I taught pre-kindergarten students and it was so exciting. It was so hands-on. I had to have lots of energy to keep up with them.
That's right.
And and because I was around 3 and 4-year-olds all day, I thought maybe I should write a children's book. And so I published Kendahl's plans in 2010 while I was still teaching. And I had a book signing. I went to different schools in Little Rock and talked about the book publishing process. I talked about my influences in how I started or came up with the idea for the book. So it was great.
Oh, that's so exciting. Oh, children's books are wonderful. And my son loves for me to read him a story. So, girl, that's on the list. And tell me more. Tell me more about your love of writing and how you evolved as an author.
Well, it started when I was growing up as a kid here in Arkansas. I loved to read books. I could go anywhere, whenever I started reading. And I'm a naturally creative person. So I also wrote in a journal, and I am a firm believer that anyone who's interested in writing should write in a journal daily, and it just improves the flow of your ideas. So, my mom, like I said, she was a teacher. So there were lots of books in our house, lots of board games. I remember my mom reading my sister, brother, and I Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. So that was my influence. And then over the years, I wrote poetry. I have just finished my second book. It's titled Kendahl and the Shopping Mall, and it will be released later this year.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. Congratulations. Oh, that's
Thank,
amazing.
thank you.
Wow, I am so excited. I'm gonna be reading those to my kid. He's gonna love that. He's gonna love that. And everybody listening, that I will put all of the information to get these books in my show notes so that you can read them to your kids or nieces and nephews or grandkids too. so,
Great.
so I know I have kind of taken up a lot of your time. I only have a couple more questions for you. Tell me now, after your experience in the military and university and becoming an author and being a teacher and having all of this wonderful experience, what advice would you give for your veteran sisters coming up behind you?
I would say believe in yourself and to use your ideas. I'm a business person. I also have a writing business where I actually edit people's memoirs and such. I consult. I help other people write children's books if they're interested in it. I do more than just write books and sell books. But I would say the world is waiting for the next great idea. And believe in yourself. That's my advice.
And such great advice it is. I think it's the root of everything because if you can't see yourself doing it, then there's no way you're going to achieve it. If you it's like so cliche, but if you think you can, you can. And if you think you can't, you can't. So believing in yourself is rule number 1, the first step, right? I agree. Thank you. Thank you for sharing such wonderful advice and sharing about how you help other writers bring their vision to life because I know that there's a lot of writers out there in our veterans community and I am sure they can use services like yours. So again, all the information will be in the show notes or description box of this episode and you can find out more about what Olympia is doing and how to contact her. And speaking of how to contact you, where can we find you? I know you have a website. Do you want to share it?
Sure. My website is olympiaJatkinson.com.
And we can just go there and find you. And I know that you are also on Instagram because that's where we met.
Yes.
So we can find you there and I will link everything. And before we wrap it up, just one more question. I know that I said in your intro that you are a philanthropist because I believe that you don't have to be like a Rockefeller or some millionaire to do philanthropic work. And right now, I know that you are working with a food drive. So would you share more about that?
Well, I'm located in Little Rock, Arkansas, and my business, OJA, titled after my name, Olympia J. Atkinson, is working with the Arkansas Food Bank to raise money for the food program. And we are collecting donations for food. So, really, we're doing this virtually. So, I know that it would be best if you can donate monetary donations, that would be awesome. You would go to arkansasfoodbank.org to make a donation.
Excellent. So, of course, that'll be there too. We can all do our part to help those of us that need help that might be at a time where they're struggling at the moment. And we all have been there, or most of us have at some point, and have needed help with something at some point. And this is one way that we can give back. And besides, it's good karma. So I will include that information. And I just want to say thank you so much, Olympia, for sharing time with me today and having this great conversation about our experiences in the military. I mean, our talking stories with my veteran sisters is like my favorite thing. And I appreciate you. So thank you so much for being a guest.
You're welcome.
And with that, we are going to wrap it up. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has been listening and sharing the episodes, especially to all of you who went to Apple Podcasts to give the show a 5-star review. Thank you so much. It just really helps the message to get out there. It will help the algorithm to spread my show out to more people, to more female veterans who might be feeling alone, so that they know that we are out here and they are not alone. And all of you who are donating to help support the show, I appreciate that. And if you want to connect with me to be a guest, you can always reach me on Instagram, send me a direct message at the Female Veterans Podcast, or you can click the link in the description box and you can connect with me that way as well. If you want to share your story or you just want to connect with me. So I appreciate you. As always, thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. We're 5 seasons in and I cannot even believe it. It's almost over already. We're almost to 6. I love you guys and I'll talk to you next time.